Today's episode is all about how to be memorable. And I want to start off with an invitation. What is the experience you create for other people? A lot of times, this isn't something that we think about too often, and yet we all create an experience. It may be a good one, it may be a bad one, it may just be neutral, but we have to remember that overall, we are creating an experience. And let me be clear, when I talk about the power of being remembered today, it is about being remembered for a good thing. It is about being remembered for things that we are proud of and happy about. And if you think about this from a customer service perspective, think about yourself on the receiving end of people on the other end of the phone. And it could be phone, it could be Zoom, it could be in person. So think about that. How do you want, number one, two questions for you to consider. How do you want people to feel around you? And then secondly, how do you want them to talk about you behind your back? So we say that a little tongue in cheek, of course. But the most important thing here is to remember, how are you coming across, and does it match with how you want to be coming across? So if we think about what makes somebody memorable, the bottom line is it's an overall experience. It's kind of like Maya Angelou is famous for saying, people won't remember what you did or what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. So think about that and reflect on a couple of those questions as we're even walking through this. So I have 5 tips for you today, and we're going to talk first about being curious. Really important to be curious. And it is something that seems like everybody's throwing that around nowadays. Be curious, be curious. And yet it is so great that people are doing that now, because hopefully it's inspiring people to ask more questions. And one of the things that I would say, bringing this into real time, is making sure that when you're talking with somebody, that you don't just ask a question and then maybe listen to one thing and then you move on. Now, there might be a time for that, but I'm talking about when you have a person that's really curious, they keep asking you questions. And I don't know about you, but I feel so special and so seen and so heard when people keep wanting to lean in with questions of, well, tell me more about that. Well, how did you get your start? And what was that like for you? Or, oh my gosh, I'd love to learn more. What else would be interesting? What else would you be interested in telling me? So, these questions to help people really get clearer, not only for themselves, but let's face it, we're talking about you and how to be memorable and how to stand out. So, one of the ways that we do that is to get really curious. And I'm thinking about a particular friend of mine who continues to ask questions. And think about this from a, well, hopefully this is all practical. From a practical perspective, though, immediately I'm thinking about a time when you get on a call with somebody. We're all networking at different times. And let's say you get on a call with somebody and they right away start talking about themselves. That is a really good example of what not to do. What you want to do is ask those questions and you be the one to start. Start first and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about you. Tell me your story, or tell me a little bit more about you. Something that leads with learning about them. If you ask that question, it's amazing how much that makes a difference as opposed to how common it is. Now, I know what I'm talking about, by the way, is very common sense. It's basic, but I'm amazed at how many people still don't do this very well. I had a call with somebody that was a get to know you call through a networking group this is a number of years ago. And I was on the phone with her for probably 20 some minutes that she was talking about herself. And I finally just told her that, hey, because I could see the clock ticking and all of a sudden there was probably 5 minutes left. And I said, hey, I'm so sorry, but I want to let you know that I'm going to have to go in 5 minutes. I know we had set aside 30 minutes for this call. And she went, oh, I didn't learn anything about you. And I was thinking, well, maybe you should have been a little bit more emotionally attuned to how you come across. And you would have thought, wow, read the room. This person hasn't said anything in the last 20 minutes. So remember, be emotionally attuned to what's happening in the situation. So, a rule of thumb as a thought for a very practical, again, time sensitive thing. If you're talking for more than a minute or a minute and a half, that's probably a time to start asking some questions. So you don't want to go on and on. Now, a minute or minute and a half doesn't feel like very long, and I understand that. It could be, of course, that you might be talking a little bit longer. But if you wonder that maybe you don't ask enough questions, time yourself or just look at the clock when you start talking and notice how long it's been. Now, I'm guessing that if you're listening to this podcast, you're already probably a high achieving woman who has great influence. And so you may not need some of these basic things. But the reason I'm bringing it up is I will repeat myself that I would challenge you to ask yourself, are you truly being curious or are you listening so that you can say something next? And I'll be honest, there are times when I'm listening to listen for a connection so that I can jump in. And sometimes that's okay to jump in, but then you don't want to keep doing that. The rule of thumb also when you're trying to identify with something that somebody else is going through, to not make it about yourself more than 60 seconds. All right. That is be curious. Be fully present. Be present. What does that mean? That means eye contact if you are able to see them on Zoom or in person. And let's recall when you're on Zoom or Teams or any virtual setting, the way you simulate eye contact is by actually looking at the webcam, at least within a range of the webcam of an inch or two. You've got to test it out. This is what I'd recommend. And I'm still amazed at how many people have their webcam in different places, or they're so fixated at looking at the person who's talking on the other end. But if the person who's talking is not near the net webcam, then it's going to look like you're looking at the floor or at the wall, and it does not create a very connecting experience. So be mindful. Test it out with someone that you know and trust over Zoom, even if it's in the same household. I have done this with my husband when we've tried out different systems, and it is a very helpful thing to say, where does it look like I'm looking? Am I looking at you? Am I looking below? Where am I looking? So you want to have that optimal connection. And then the other thing is, besides eye contact, is making sure that you're not distracted. And believe me, I do all of these things. I'm a work in progress too, but it is amazing. I have been working very hard at these things over the years, and I'm so grateful that people say, "Wow, you're so with me." And I just don't think many people do that very well. We are often thinking about what we want to say. We're distracted because of that. We're distracted because our phone is going off, or we have notifications on in the background with our computer. There's so many different things. We are generally very distracted right now in life. So the more present you can be, even with your body language, having an open posture so that you're not closed off or you don't look closed off, that can be really helpful. And going back to being curious, I would really challenge you to lean in and ask more questions. I had a friend a while back that I gave some constructive feedback to who uh, who often just jumped in to give solutions to problems that I didn't necessarily need a solution for, but that was her way of caring about me. So we had this whole conversation about how it's actually more caring to me, how I feel cared for is when you really listen in conversation. And she really took that to heart. She is also a work in progress, and so we sometimes chuckle at this. And I remember the other day she said, "Tell me more." And it was so funny because she doesn't normally say that. And it wasn't anything deep that I was talking about. So it felt kind of like a funny time to ask me, "Tell me more," or say, "Tell me more." But this is a great example of I know her heart. I know she's experimenting and she really wants to earnestly hear me and listen. So be gentle with yourself as you're practicing some of these things. But tell me more is a really good response to get someone to keep going in their conversation. And then the other one is to say anything else. So it's especially helpful at the very end. And in fact, I was talking to somebody who is in HR and she said, "This is my favorite question. I always ask this." And she goes, "That's usually when things come out." So remember the power of being curious by asking those questions from tip number one, and number two, being fully present. The third one is to be vulnerable. Now, I'm talking about being professionally vulnerable. So, what I mean by that, if we look back to Brene Brown's wonderful research and examples, it's all about connection. And the way that we connect is by being vulnerable. And it simply means sharing a little bit about yourself beyond just the where you live and that kind of thing. Share something a little bit different about you. So it could simply be share about how you grew up, share about your family, share about if you have kids or like I do have cats, share about your pets, share about what's going on in your life, your dreams, anything, what kind of movies you watch. It doesn't have to be this fully um I don't know, like pulling back the curtains of your life and sharing all of these things that are uncomfortable. This simply means talking a little bit about yourself. And I'm sure you can relate to this. For those of you that have been vulnerable and you've shared your story or you've shared examples about your life, people lean into that and then they tend to share more. And then there's great connection that happens. It's so funny. You again, think about this. Whenever I share a personal LinkedIn post, that is when I get a lot of comments. So things about Chris's kidney and the success of that. And at the moment that I'm recording this, he's actually in the ER, and we're really praying that the kidney is not rejected. They're still doing tests on that right now. But it's such a great example of how often when we share these things that are really personal, even though that doesn't, it is personal. So I want to also be clear. I know I just said, well, don't share anything. You don't have to share anything super personal. It's whatever you're comfortable with. But start small, start low stakes and feel like notice how that goes and how it builds connection. Because there are also a handful of people in my life that I can think of over the years who have not been willing to share. And then it makes it seem like they're hiding something. Or it just feels like, wow, you know all these things about me, but you're not willing to share about you. And so drawing them out is really powerful, going back to being curious with those questions. But volunteer some of these things. Share a little bit about your life. I was on a call this morning and somebody before the whole thing was going, there was a group, it was a group call, and somebody was talking about how she still uses one of those old-fashioned lawn mowers, a push mower. And it was really funny, and it gave me a glimpse into her personality. Now you wouldn't think, oh, that's not like share what am I saying? Going with like sharing my soul. It's just something unique and that's a little bit different. And then I was able to share my story growing up of how in Minnesota, that's what we used to mow our lawn until I took a job at a gentleman's house to mow his lawn, and he had a power mower. And I said, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So, right there, that was a connection point between us. People on the call as they were coming in also got to know me a little bit better. So, you never know what can happen through some sharing something vulnerable. I'm also remembering a past boss of mine who was not willing to share things about her personal life much, except for maybe this or that about her kids. But one day that I will remember, and I worked there for 14 years, one day she shared a bracelet that she had that her grandmother, that was her grandmother's, and her grandmother had recently passed away. And she actually got teary. And I thought, wow, I have never seen that. And people leaned in so much and really met her with great empathy. It was such a powerful moment. So remember, its vulnerability is very powerful and can connect you with people and make you stand out and be memorable because they're going to remember these things that are especially connected to emotions because we are emotional beings. So anything that you can connect to that, going back to Maya Angelou's quote about people aren't going to remember how what you said or what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. Number four. Oh, let's go back for a minute about vulnerable. A lot of times people are afraid that they're not going to share something that's good enough or it's not perfect enough. Please have grace for yourself. This is where you have to just go, it's not about perfection. This is about connection. And people don't want to connect with perfect. Let me tell you, and you probably know this, but people that are overly perfect or rigid, That's how they come across. They come across as if they're not human. And in all of my coaching with people on how to be a good presenter on stage or even just presenting conversationally in a meeting, it is so true how the more perfect someone comes across, the harder it is to connect with them. So embrace your imperfections, and it's okay. It's actually beneficial. All right, number 4, be unexpected. The thing I mean from this is do something unexpected. Send a handwritten thank you note. Send a gift card. Send something. Do something. Give a shout out on LinkedIn. This happened to me a couple weeks ago where somebody specifically wrote about me and said, I want to introduce you to someone amazing in my network. And I thought, wow, that was so nice. That was Katrina Patton, by the way. She's an amazing person that I met through Athena Alliance. That was so unexpected and she really stood out. And let's face it, not that you're doing this because of what I'm going to say next, but the law of reciprocity is how we are wired as human beings. Somebody does something nice for us, we naturally want to do something nice for them. So I will never forget that she did that. And in fact, today, Jenny Patterson wrote about me and how much impact I've had on her life. And I'm not trying to say this to beef myself up. My point is that you these are things that like now I'm going to remember both of them for a very long time, probably long even more than I would have. They're both wonderful people. I really care about them already, but that just made them stand out even more. So that's something. Be unexpected, do something different that they don't see coming, that stands out from the crowd. And number 5, I love this one. Embrace your uniqueness. Be quirky, but be authentically yourself. And when I say quirky, again, it doesn't mean you have to share all these things. But if you've been following me for a while, you know the PPU formula. If you haven't followed me, here's what it is. It's a way to introduce yourself, to sound really clear and focused, and keep it short. You say something personal, professional, and unique about yourself. So it might be something like this. Hi, I'm Karen Laos. I am originally from Minneapolis, but now I live in the Bay Area. Something a little bit unique about me, or professionally, I didn't say that yet. Professionally, I am a keynote speaker specifically for the hospitality industry, and I help people speak with confidence and clarity so they can advance and open doors of opportunity for themselves. A little unique thing about me is that I always had a dream to live in Manhattan. So for the entire month of my 50th birthday, I rented an apartment there and I lived like a local. So that could be a wonderful way, or that is a wonderful way to introduce yourself. Now, what I was going to say is my unique is my own. It could be different. Sometimes I change it up. Sometimes I simply talk about how I love repurposing leftovers, which is a little bit weird and quirky. But I will tell you, I am unapologetically myself, and I would encourage you to be the same way. Embrace your uniqueness. If there's something that you do that's a little bit quirky or strange, share it. When I used to work at Decker Communications, one of my colleagues could lick her elbow and she would show us up front. Hillary, if you're listening, I love you. I think that was just so great. So we all have something, and it could be there's certain places that you love to travel. It could be another thing that I do is I take my Tempur-Pedic pillow everywhere I go, meaning on a trip. I don't take it in the car with me on errands, but I take it with me on trips. So there is something about you that's unique. And if you feel like you don't know what that is, ask some people that you know and trust around you. Ask them, hey, what is it to you that makes me stand out? Or is there anything quirky that I do or any idiosyncrasy that I have or something funny that I do that not everybody does? That is a great example of finding out for yourself. So let's review how to be memorable and stand out. Number 1, be curious by asking questions and ask more than one. Lean in. Number 2, be present fully. Be aware of distractions and do whatever you can to fully engage with that person and listen. By the way, pausing is a great tool with that. Force yourself to pause. Like one of my clients has a mantra, stop, pause, breathe. That helped her a lot to not jump into conversations. Number 3, be vulnerable by sharing your stories. Number 4, be unexpected. Things like a thank you note or a kind gesture that's a little different from the rest. Number 5, embrace your uniqueness and don't be afraid to share some of these unique things about you, and that will connect you and also make you very memorable. I will never forget Hillary can lick her elbow. So keep that in mind. And on that note, I want to remind you a couple of things. Number 1, I have a self-assessment called The Confidence Cocktail, and that link is in the show notes. So check that out if you want to assess how to be even more of a clear, compelling, and credible communicator. I have a program for executive women in hospitality called the Powerhouse. It's actually for others than just the hospitality now. So if you're interested in, if you want to be a better public speaker, a better negotiator, and get more opportunities, consider setting up a call with me to talk about that. And thirdly, feel free to check out my book. I don't know if you know that I have a book, and the anniversary was recent in June. So it's called Trust Your Own Voice. It is a guidebook to help women grow their influence through confident communication. And lastly, on my website, you can see that I have 9 words to avoid if you want to be more confident and credible, 9 words to avoid and what to say instead. So check that out. Lots of resources for you. Looking forward to seeing you next time. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.